Today we're delving into Joe Bandel's work, specifically Chapter 2 of his book, The Oak Magus, which introduces us to the Zealator degree. Eloise, this sounds like a profoundly personal stage of development described as a passionate awakening of conscience. What exactly does that mean within the Golden Dawn's mystical framework?
It's the second significant step in soul development, symbolized as 1 equals 10, and it's intimately tied to Yesid on the Tree of Life. Think of Yesid as the lunar realm, governing our emotions and subconscious. So this awakening is a fiery, passionate shift, often felt acutely during adolescence, typically between ages 10 and 14. It's that moment when you feel a cause so deeply you'd fight for it, or when guilt compels you to rethink your actions. You start confronting your flaws and forging a moral compass.
You mentioned this stage involves confronting flaws and forging a moral compass. The text also outlines 2 distinct paths, a male path and a female path, and then their alchemical interaction. This gendered distinction immediately catches my attention. Could you elaborate on how these paths diverge?
Certainly. The text presents them as almost opposite experiences. The male path is depicted as a linear climb towards spiritual rebirth, often characterized by intense introspection and a confrontation with guilt. The female path, however, is a more cyclical dive into physical vitality, focusing on outward expression and engaging with the world. The idea is that their interaction creates a transformative spark, a tug of war that ultimately fuels growth. It teaches us to listen to that inner voice and balance passion with purpose.
Let's explore that male path first. The description, from guilt to spiritual rebirth, paints a vivid picture. It suggests a really challenging period, like climbing a steep hill where you see every flaw. Is this primarily about moral shortcomings?
Yes, precisely. For those on this path, the Zealator degree feels like confronting a mirror that shows every flaw. It's the adolescence where you awaken to your conscience, often around age 14, though some never fully cross this threshold. It's when a teenager awakens to their conscience and recognizes the gap between who they are and who they want to be. The text says he becomes a zealot, burning with conviction, perhaps even feeling born again in a religious sense. But this passion unearths heavy baggage, guilt, and self-loathing. Every regretted word, every shameful act, like lying to a parent or hurting a sibling, surfaces. He feels driven by impulses, almost like an animal. And it's a brutal but necessary confrontation with self. Some flee this reflection, living in shame, unable to forgive themselves.
That sounds incredibly intense. So this mirror of the soul leads to a crisis point. How does one move past that profound sense of guilt and self-loathing?
The text frames it as a call to repent, sinner, not just religiously, but a universal urge to change. The individual shifts from identifying with their physical body and its desires to their immortal soul, the part that lives beyond death. Phrases like, "He who believes shall never die," resonate. This brings significant changes, stopping old habits, striving to live better, and learning self-forgiveness. The inner voice of conscience then becomes a guide for spiritual growth. However, there's a caveat. This new identity often brings a sense of loneliness. He feels separate, a bittersweet joy in being saved, yet isolated because his path feels unique. He might want others to share his awakening, but they might ignore him. This sparks compassion for others' struggles, softening his heart. As emotions lose their grip, he leans on logic and reason, which can dull life's simple joys and cause the inner child to fade.
That's a powerful and somewhat bittersweet transformation. Now, the female path seems to be described very differently as embracing physical vitality. How does that contrast with the guilt-ridden journey of the male path?
It's quite a departure. On the female path, the Zealator degree is described as riding a vibrant wave full of life and sensuality, often peaking in the early teens. It's less about internal guilt and more about engaging the world with a powerful, fading, intuitive spark. This stage is about embracing the body while spiritual awareness takes a backseat. Imagine a teenage girl who's charming and magnetic, effortlessly influencing others. She sees nature as bountiful, radiating an impersonal love and innocence. Unlike the male path's struggle with sin, she dives into physical life, reacting to emotions and stimuli with curiosity and joy, experimenting with beauty and using flirting as a playful tool to wrap peers around her finger.
So instead of confronting spiritual flaws, she's celebrating her physical self and its impact on the world. But the text mentions her goddess awareness withdrawing. Does this mean a loss of spiritual connection at this stage?
Yes, in a way. While the male path experiences a shift towards a spiritual, the female path's goddess awareness from childhood, where she felt all-knowing, starts to withdraw. She identifies with a sensual, physical self, not a spiritual one. The spiritual aspect becomes a mental backdrop. Her intellect is sharp, and social activities bring belonging. But as spiritual energy wanes, emotions surge like wild currents. She might chase thrills and get into trouble. Worldly delights dominate, but compassion can fade. The text notes she might use people, growing colder and lonelier as she prioritizes her desires. This shift grounds her in the vibrant challenges of the physical world, preparing her for deeper bodily awareness later on.
It's fascinating how these two paths, seemingly so different, are both crucial to the Zealator stage. Then we get to their alchemical interaction, where these energies collide. How do these passionate sparks manifest in relationships?
This is where the duality ignites, like a storm meeting a sunny shore. It's the passionate spark of young love or intense friendship, where energies clash and transform. Take a teenage romance. The male path individual sees his partner as a goddess, his passion pouring out as spiritual energy, trusting his intuition that she's the one. His body shivers with desire, and his intensity sends raw energy her way. The female path individual feels this force. Her body responds sensually, but it can also overwhelm her, making her timid. Yet she embraces this plunge into materialism, craving that physical connection too.
And the text describes this interaction as something akin to tantric foreplay that doesn't necessarily require physical intimacy. How does that exchange facilitate growth?
It means the deep, sincere emotion shared through things like holding hands, sharing dreams, or even passionate arguments can merge their auras. The male path individual generates an idealistic fire, while the female channels it into sensual expression. Together, they balance his inward guilt with her outward joy, exploring the power of intimacy and learning to direct these energies toward shared goals, like supporting each other's dreams. This partnership amplifies their growth, making the Zealator awakening a shared adventure. It can lead to deep commitment, or, if unchecked, mistakes, like unplanned pregnancy.
The idea that these distinct internal journeys can, through interaction, lead to a shared, amplified growth is quite profound. For listeners looking to engage with their own Zealator conscience, what practical tools does Joe Bandel offer in the Oak Magus? So the Zealator degree, as explained by Joe Bandel in the Oak Magus, truly is this fiery adolescence of the soul. It involves navigating intense emotional landscapes, whether through introspection and guilt of the male path, the vibrant sensuality of the female path, or the transformative alchemy of their interactions. It ultimately prepares individuals by having them master emotional foundations. Thank you for walking us through this complex stage, Eloise.
My pleasure, Noah.